Walk with me through the cellar door.
A storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
Oh, welcome to Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. We are trying something very, very, very new tonight. So you'll bear with me here because
Yes.
I'm testing something that I've never done before, and I don't think it's going to work, but we're about to find out.
The big takeaway is that Tanner is experimenting.
I am experimenting, so if I'm a little quieter tonight, I apologize. I'll try not to be, but we'll kind of see how it goes. Essentially, I'm trying to stream live on Spreaker, stream live on YouTube, and on Facebook all at one time.
And if his house burns down, it's the computers.
Yeah,
you need like a liquid.
Exactly.
You need a liquid cooled Alienware gaming PC to handle all that media blasting that you're doing.
Yeah, I have a feeling this is not going to work. Because I think that there's a lag on the Facebook side, but we're gonna go ahead and run and test it and kind of see how it goes from there. And maybe we'll get lucky, maybe we won't. And we'll just kind of see how it works. I don't like that I'm very fuzzy right now. Because I'm one monitor, I'm like 100% clean. On another monitor, I'm not.
Oh my God, you are Bigfoot. We found him.
So-
We found Bigfoot, everybody.
So if it
You
doesn't
stop
work,
looking.
and I can only interact in one place. I don't have enough screens and computer power, I don't think, to interact in multiple places. So, if you are watching on Facebook, we 100% are definitely on YouTube. You can come see us over there if you want to give us comments. Otherwise, cheers to the attempted show on Facebook.
Yeah,
I
I'll see.
forgot to pour my liquor booze.
I'll see if I can't run some backup Facebook chatty action, but more than likely, all of the things are just going to start on fire. So
My
what do
guess
you guys do?
is that there's probably a really big lag in the video and audio because I have the audio directly running into my system versus the video. So we'll see. Anyway, back to the show, folks. So tonight we have a couple of different things that we're gonna touch on. We're gonna obviously start with our segment, answering Republicans. We're gonna do that first. But our big topic tonight is a new study around COVID, and it's fun because the study with COVID essentially is demonstrating that there is a reason why this disease is so aggressively angry at the human body, and there is also scientific reasons behind some drugs that may be able to help fight this. And the funny thing is I bet you can all guess which drug didn't show up on the list.
Hydroxychloroquine.
You stole my answer.
It sounds like the two of you been listening to Trump a little too much there.
It could be.
It's a guilty
Or
hobby.
it could be that every time I turn around in Ohio, someone says, "Hey, you guys tried this thing yet? I heard it's a cure."
Hey, you heard that thing there that Trump gone said it's gonna work. It's gonna cure us all. We're gonna be fine.
It could have potentiality, but it's an anti-inflammatory. It's not an antiviral. Anyways, continues with more science.
Yeah. So
Yes.
our big thing is going to be science today, and I wanted to focus on it just as a little bit of a change. We will also have a revised segment called Canadian Rants with Buddy the Lumberjack. So that's coming. And I was trying to name it polite Canadian rants, and then I was just like, that sounds dumb. I gotta find a new
It's
word.
redundant.
There you go. And then we also have a segment where we're going to be looking at a way that Grand Rapids, Michigan is actually fighting inequality. So it's going to be kind of like a live example.
Cool.
So before we begin, Hannah, you had a little bit of a misadventure this weekend. How was your camping fiasco, climbing rocks and trying not to let 2- and 4-year-olds jump off a cliff?
It was an adventure. That's definitely the campground we stayed at south of Columbus. Adventure something, and it was a flat, normal, plain campground. It was awesome. We bought some gear. To see if the girls liked it. They enjoyed it. I got to use my cast iron, and I'm always in a good mood when I get to do that. We took photos and shared them around. You can see them on our Instagram. It was a good time. We went to some places. There's a thing called Hocking Hills in Ohio that is like these like limestone, sandstone quarries and like just like these huge holes and where water run off. And in the area of Ohio, it's like the beginning of the mountains, and it just gets super, super vertical, and all the roads really do these lateral turns. And so like if you can imagine like a racetrack through hills. So if you've ever seen Le Mans racing or whatever, all the roads are really scenic, cliff faces, rocks everywhere. I don't know. It was just a really nice get away from society. Your internet is garbage. And so we pretty much just kind of kept to ourselves and spent some time with the kids. It's stressful, but it's enjoyable. So like our first time camping, trying to keep the girls under control, and then also going to these places that we thought they would be really cool, but it was like, we brought the dogs too, and so it was one of those things where like 2 dogs, pit mixes, keep an eye out for dogs. Is there any dog anywhere around the area? Do we need to move? We make sure dogs don't have a dog fight on a cliff face. And then 2 girls are like, ooh, what's down there? 150 feet in death. It's like keeping an eye on all of those things all at once. So I was like, had a couple moments where you could just like look at things and be like, ooh. But most of the time it was just like, I felt like Jason Bourne. Like, where's all the things? You gotta keep an eye on all the pieces. Where's everybody's thing? Hands, feet, legs, quadrupeds, bipeds. Everybody's got to be under control. And it was stressful when we were at the places. Yeah, it was stressful at the places, but the campgrounds were really nice and relaxing. And so hopefully the girls liked it, and we'll do it more, because I do think having a little bit of nature in our lives is a good thing right now. It's a really great thing for like social distancing. You can just kind of get away, have a campfire and stuff. So I enjoyed it, and now that we have the gear, it'll be cheaper next time.
Fair enough. I spent most of my weekend playing board games. So.
How was your 2-day weekend?
My weekend, I learned something amazing. Some of you may have heard of this this person. He's kind of an author now, apparently. He goes by the name Ben Shapiro, and I listened. Hang on. This made my life. This sustained me because it exposed just how unaware of the human body that this guy is. So some of you may have heard of this little podcast called Behind the Bastards, and the premise of the show is basically they kind of go do a behind the scenes of people that are infamous, and talks about something random. So I've learned about Hitler's love of these American cowboy fiction from the late 1800s, and did not realize how big into that little bit of teen fiction he was from that show. And anyways, they were talking about Ben Shapiro's racist book, and they've managed to get, I think, at least 3 episodes out of that book so far. They read an excerpt from the first 2 paragraphs of it, and oh god, yes. And he describes the main character of his right-wing erotic propaganda, and I call it erotic propaganda because it's your basic right-wing masturbatory fantasies.
It's like the Netflix show Making an Incel. Oh wait,
almost. And it talks about how the general is a bear of a man at 6'3" and 215 pounds, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, hold up.
He's been in one of those bars before.
I'm 6'2", At my heaviest, I was 225 pounds, and I was still an otter. So, I guess for somebody like Ben Shapiro, I'm a bear. Which again, the fact that the guy is so completely detached from reality is just astounding, and that's kind of what got me through the weekend. If you need to know what my life is like these days.
And it gets significantly more vulgar.
Significantly.
A lot more vulgar.
Oh, even better. So as the song that you're hearing in the background, he can't say what he means by P word, but he actually uses it in his book. So it's like, what is it, dude? Are you able to say it? Are you just like, can you not do the mouth words for it? Or did somebody else put it in there? Because otherwise he kind of felt weird and got tingly and your wife got mad at you.
Yeah, you effing with some wet ass P word.
I saw a really cool analysis of essentially of Shapiro and essentially how he is almost leaning into these moments of just frightening stupidity, but also taking him on the chin and using him as a platform. Because all of the times that he says something so unnervingly detached from reality and so completely memeable, he is all over everywhere. And it justifies the people that are his followers thinking that he's being attacked. And so like it's this weird recycling narrative of like how the incel culture and how like Big Bad Ben Shapiro is such an intellectual beast that he has to be attacked by the liberal media. It's interesting to see this. Like this guy was explaining the cycle, and the WAP song, and then I'm sure there'll be another one in 6 months. Keep an eye out for it. Where Ben comes out, is just surprisingly doing something insane, and it'll do something else again. It's like that.
Oh yeah. Actually, but because I can see that Tanner's like, okay, we've got a show to get to. On this one website that I'm part of, Quora. I get these random little recommended answers to random questions that you might be interested in. There was one where they were actually talking about his interview on BBC and basically why it led to him throwing such a temper tantrum and rage quitting, even though the person who was interviewing him was from a similar political ideology. And the biggest reason is that Ben Shapiro, you only see him ever going on the attack. You only ever see him trying to hold control of the situation. He's got, the high ground, so to speak, when he's on the podium. He's going up against college students who are, they're so passionate, but they haven't quite learned how to reel themselves in enough that they can not lose control and get upset. So he's so used to having that edge on people that when he's got to sit there and not necessarily even be on the defensive, but like explain himself and his points and hold himself accountable, he can't do it.
He's a king of whataboutism. He's a king of whataboutism. So like, there's never a defensive argument. It's always offensive and like backpedaling. Continue.
Yeah, him and JBP, but that's that. If you want to hear a Canadian rant, we'll go down that one. But that's not tonight's. That's not for tonight.
No, it's not a tangent cast. It's not,
nope. It is not.
All right.
Mm-mm.
Well,
not tonight.
Just a quick reminder, since y'all got the tangent, cops shouldn't kill guilty people either. Pretty simple. I don't know how.
Can you do
how many times do we have
apostrophes?
to say that?
Can you put apostrophes in a hashtag?
I did. Do you see it? You see it?
Yeah, but that's not a functioning. You gotta get rid of the apostrophe, man.
I'll tell you what. That's ridiculous.
I'm
gonna have to make it say cannot. All right, I'm doing it.
Well, Twitter. There we go. That works. That's functional.
Ooh.
A little more specific, actually.
Anyway, moving on to the first segment of the show.
Boom.
So we should be marking these tangent intros down. We're at 14 minutes right now. But so the very first segment we did last week was answering Republican questions. And I think it's one of those things where we talked through kind of questions either submitted to the show, questions that have been submitted to me personally, or at some point ones that have been submitted to either one of you. So we'll
Ooh.
kind of go from there. And if y'all get one and you don't want to wait till the last minute and send it to me, we can include it on the show. So you can email cellardoorskeptics@gmail.com or message us on Facebook. So for the question tonight, though, is going to be, why do liberals tell conservative pro-life individuals that they are not truly pro-life? So again, kind of in the fashion of last week, why don't we go ahead and start with Buddy, and then we'll hit Hannah and kind of go from there.
To sit there and consider yourself pro-life is it's a very general statement, and it's applied to a far too specific example. Saying that you're pro-life because you're against abortion completely misses the point of what it truly means to actually be pro-life. I mean, all too often we see conservative policies that are geared more towards reducing access to things like healthcare, education, things that would genuinely improve your quality of life. To be pro-life would be to be in favor of those things, and from where I'm sitting here. And I don't know, to me, it just kind of makes sense that in order to be pro-life, you would be in favor of policies that would improve quality of life for everyone, not just, a select and chosen few who were born into privilege. And furthermore, you're not pro-life just because you want to control a woman's right to say that she doesn't want to be pregnant. What you're actually in favor of is control, tyranny, slavery, basically, because let's face it, that's saying that a woman who had, if she was raped and became pregnant from that rape, just as one example, she has no real recourse, no way of properly handling that situation in her own way. She is basically held hostage to this baby that she did not consent to the creation of. She was not a willing participant in the creation of. And ultimately, who are we to say that she must go through that experience? She must encounter that. I'm not saying that she shouldn't go through that. She shouldn't choose to go through that. Again, woman's choice, woman's body. But to force somebody to hold them hostage, that's not pro-life. That's pro-suffering. That's pro-fetus. But then that takes us to the next step. What do you do? What programs do you offer to give that fetus the best possible chance? If you truly believe in an equality society where everybody is given the same opportunity to get ahead, why are you not in favor of policies that would truly ensure that, like higher taxes for the rich so that they can't hoard 90% of the wealth amongst 1% of the population? Why do you think that that's more okay? Then there's also another argument that I've recently encountered where it says, we give foster parents monthly allowances. There's a kind of a criticism that some foster parents only take in kids so they can get money. I think it's actually kind of a TV trope in some places or in some areas. And you're willing to give somebody else that money, but you're not willing to give, say, a young teenage mother that money because reasons. Ultimately speaking, if you are truly pro-life, you are not just focused on forcing a woman to carry a child simply because somebody told you that that's more important than anything else. That the idea of abortion is so abhorrent that you get to dictate that you are pro-life because you are pro-fetus and you want a baby to be born. God damn it. You don't want to support it once it's out of the womb. You don't want to pay for social services to allow that child or the mother to excel or get ahead. Nope. They have to pull themselves up by the bootstraps, even though they've been shot in both feet and kneecapped. That is not pro-life. Period.
All right, Hannah.
It's a simple marketing issue in all reality. This is entirely pro-life is anti-abortion. That's what it really is. Like the pro-life concept of taking care of everyone, the idea of a communistic perspective where everyone has equal opportunity, equal access to all the food and everything like that. Like that is an area that they are willing to go into. So this argument specifically is an anti-abortion argument. That's when you see pro-life, you're not thinking they're all of the other things. It's a very specific rebranding issue where they're talking about this is my stance on abortion, but it's marketing. This is all it is. That this has been attested. People accept this and like this branding, this phrasing better than anti-abortion. And then you hear pro-choice. This is also pro-abortion. This is also a branding and marketing thing. Humans are weird. They know what these things are, but they prefer warmer, softer terminology. But in the argument here that we have is saying they're not truly pro-life, it usually extends to the fact that they're only pro-life until the baby is born, and then that's basically the end of any kind of support and assistance, aside from religious assistance. If you're going to be getting the church support and things like that, so it's like giving churches and religious groups money to help support these babies after they've been born, then you can continue that the culture growth and control the mind and everything else. So like there's a variety of things that are happening here, but when it comes to it, when we talk about absolutism, it's, are you pro-life for everyone, anyone that's sick, anyone any race, gender, creed, whatever it is? Are you supporting that? In all reality, that general broad term isn't what they're talking about. And so like if you say that, it's apples and oranges in the comparisons. And so the progressives are saying, no, you're saying this, I'm taking this these two words as their general consensus of like all humans, and these other people are like, no, I am speaking specifically about this. And that's the issue we hear. The people are comparing two different things.
Fair enough. So I think in my experience, I think there's a couple of different things. I agree with the majority of what people are saying, and a lot of this came out of a discussion I had with an individual who essentially doesn't want to vote for Biden because if they have to pick one issue, their issue is they have to be pro-life. And this runs in my family quite a bit. So it's not like a uncommon, theme, right? And so the first thing I always say is look, you're a one voter issue. If that's really truly the case, and I just said, fine, we'll ban all abortions, will you vote Democrat? And will you get all of your friends to vote Democrat? And if that's the case, then fine. Let's have that conversation. Let's actually be serious about it. Because if you genuinely are going to latch on to that, there's a huge middle ground between Democrats and Republicans you're missing. Most Democrats are not pro-abortion. They're pro-choice. Now, I won't lie and tell you that maybe somebody like me is definitely pro-abortion. I'm a little different, though. So I won't sit there and say that's 100% the case for all Democrats, right? But I could tell you that the majority of Democrats all land on a few main issue points that can fix that could fix this. And we could look at the logic and the statistics behind it if we really wanted to do that.
We've gone through this conversation a few times in the past. Just look up cellar skeptics and abortion, and you can find a couple of our hashtags.
Yeah. And so for me, the big thing kind of comes into is, all right, fine. Support better sex education. Support birth control. Support better insurance to help the mother pay for the baby. Support other means such as childcare and this and that, which a lot of Democrats support. Again, maybe in the Biden camp, they're not as aggressive as I would like them to be, but they're still there. And we could sit here all day and talk and say, you want to ban abortion? Well, these are the other things that you're going to have come across the aisle. You're going to have to do that because nobody's going to just ban abortion unless we're willing to make all these other changes. And, and again, I'll give credit to a lot of pro-life individuals is they do genuinely want to see other changes, which would help reduce that amount. Jeremiah Bannister is one of them. Though he keeps having kids. Again, it's a Catholic thing, I guess. I don't know. But like he does believe, hey, sex education could be better. He believes in birth control. Those type of things. So we got to find those means. So when we talk about why we don't feel pro-life individuals are actually truly pro-life, it's because they don't support anything but a fetus. Now, it's rude if I call you anti-choice. It's rude if I call you pro-fetus. Those are the only things I see, though, to some extent, because you don't support sex education. You don't support birth control. You push your abstinence-only belief down our throats. You push your religion into it. And those are just things that are not going to fix anything at all. But
Digging a trench.
Yeah. So here's the big deal. If we take that factor, right, and say the only reason you're voting, or the majority of the reason you're voting Republican, is for a pro-life candidate, then what you can sit around and work on is not forcing illegal abortions to start happening. And you can do that by taking all those other stances I said, to begin with, right? Because truly, in my opinion, Republicans are not pro-life. If they were pro-life, they would, again, work to get children out of cages. They don't do that. They would work to get that change, because those children are here now. They're not like fetuses.
That's pro-American. That's pro-American life. That's different.
Yeah. And they're not, but if you're a child in America, you are still a child. And if you want to be like Hannah saying pro-American children, then we have a whole different viewpoint. And instead of saying you're a pro-lifer, you should just say I'm pro only American white children. Just say it. Because that's where you're at.
It's hard.
So Republicans aren't pro-life because they don't support the measures to stop women from getting pregnant. They also don't promote better sex education. They also don't promote children that are not white having, a leg up. Fourthly, they also don't freaking promote life after birth. So that's all it is. Life after birth. And so if that's where we're at, if that's where we have to come on to, when you ask why we don't understand or why we disagree with you being a pro-life individual, is because it's not truly, genuinely pro-life. It's called exclusive pro-life. And then you can tailor it to American exclusive pro-life, white people, exclusive pro-life, rich people, exclusive pro-life.
They're using a very broad general term for a very specific selective topic. It's branding. This is all marketing. That pro-life is all warm and fuzzy. Like everybody goes, yeah.
And
who isn't pro-life in all reality? That doesn't get down to the isolating it to just your views on abortion. Like they're doing that intentionally. It's all about branding, language, and marketing. And
to take that a step further, it poisons the well against your opponent because, well, if everybody's pro-life, well, you're not pro-life. Well, you're a terrible person, and you get to instantly have not necessarily credentials, but you get to have the favor of your crowd and any who might be on the fence, simply because you've used language specifically designed to create division and alienate those who would disagree, simply because you got it first. And that's the best way to sell something, is to be the first to get it and own it in such a way that anybody who opposes you, they're the bad guys. I mean, we see it happen in politics all the time.
One of the most frustrating things is like a strategic move where someone made the right decision, and it was the right decision to brand that way.
Anyway, so there you go. That's the
anti-life is metal. Anyways,
we just hit the meta subreddit.
Just hit what?
The meta subreddit. Just a bunch of people wandering around looking up.
Like turkeys in the rain.
Fair enough. On to a different subject. And again, I'll go back to if you have a question, if you're listening to this and aren't liberal and you have a question you want answered, or if you're liberal and you're frustrated with a relative and you want to know, hey, what's a question or what's a reasonable answer? I mean, notice we just spent 15 minutes not swearing, so you can clip that and give it to your relatives if you want, or if you send us an email, we can specifically do that for our segment. So we'll kind of go from there.
We like
Next-
the emails.
We do, yeah. Except for I'm the only one that ever answers them, but that's okay.
They could try
Burn.
emailing me.
Nobody emails you, buddy.
I know.
Anyway, Jesus. All right, not to get self-deprecating. New COVID study. So there's a new COVID study out there, actually, and I'll be honest, it's kind of amazing. And I don't know if did either of you read any of my notes for it? We'll just start there.
I'd heard of it. I hadn't actually read that. Most of the stuff that I've been paying attention to is usually associated with the vaccinations, and so the people studying the actual virus itself is something that isn't really shown and broadcast too much on my usual go-to, which Idea Stream in Cleveland, NPR. And so I haven't heard anything about this on the airwaves. I've just seen little bits and pieces of it that they've been analyzing COVID specifically as opposed to trying to create a vaccination.
Yeah, and I don't think this was specifically something they said, we're going to never create a vaccination. They essentially are just going out of their way to say, here's the deal, folks. We've done some study. There's a new emergent theory on what some of this stuff is, right? And so they actually use a supercomputer, which is what I found amazing, right? Because a supercomputer might actually squash this virus, right? Hence the little Pac-Man eating viruses, so Pac-Man's my supercomputer and the ghosts are the viruses. Fair enough. But it's analyzing and looking at some of the different things. So there is something called Summit Supercomputer. Has anybody heard of this?
Mm-hmm.
Just now.
All right.
There's a few supercomputers that are doing various things when it comes to COVID all around the world. There's a couple in France. There's some that are throughout Europe. There's a bunch in the United States. They're doing a bunch of really massive statistical analyses going on right now. I'm just assuming that Summit's doing. When you have a pandemic, you get pushed to first in the line for like computational analysis.
Yeah, that's extremely true. And that's with this, that's essentially what this is, right? So this is the supercomputer created by Spectrum, right? That is analyzing COVID-19 and possible breakthroughs in this virus, right? So they're using genetic data mining research uncovered a common pattern of gene activity in the lungs of COVID patients, right? They also are going forward saying, hey, we might have found a cure, right? Or not a cure, but I don't want to call it a cure, but I want to call it a counter to the virus. So if we talk through this and we're like, oh, hey, I found a cure. Well, did you really find a cure? Did you find a drug that fought the virus off really well? And that's essentially...
I think the term might be mechanism. So like they found a mechanism that like if a drug performed this particular function or did this thing with this specific tool, it would be able to neutralize, attack, destroy, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like we're creating tiny biological drones with virus and vaccinations. So that's kind of what they're probably trying to do, is either hijack the immune system to just do what you want, or to in some way create something that goes into the body and does what you want it to do and self-replicates, whatever. And this I have heard, the bradykinin and the coronavirus. This is something that I have read through the Google News. So continue. This one's fun.
Yeah. So essentially what they talk about is that it's the Bradykin theory, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so let's talk a little bit, and that's why I brought this article in, even though it technically isn't specifically the same thing. But this article is actually really, really interesting because, here you go. Here's the actual paper, right?
Mm-hmm.
and they're actually talking about what a Brady Kinnunen, is it Brady Kinnunen? Am I just saying it wrong?
This is Brady
Kinnunen?
Kinnan. Just one
Brady
Kinnan.
Kinnan. Okay, so fine, I said it right. So it's Brady Kinnan hypothesis, and you
Yeah.
probably should know what it is. Now, essentially, what they're doing is they're talking about biological activity by this specific amino acid, right? And so it lowers blood pressure by dilating blood vessels. Hence, like the first screen I showed had the blood vessels with the little white dots in them, essentially helping to pressurize these blood vessels, right? So what it's doing is it's creating a ripple effect throughout your body. And the problem is that because it's creating this effect on people, right? There's certain specific inhibitors that are not allowing your body to pick up different nutrients or different things that you need. And so the idea, and we'll pick on like the dry cough for effect, right? Talks about how these specific inhibitors are essentially bradykinin. I'm just gonna say it that way because
Yeah, you might as well. You're adding an extra in, but
Kinnunen.
Brady
Kinnan.
Bradykinin.
Welcome to Cellar Skeptics pronunciation.
It's the Brady effect. I don't know what to tell you. They just keep multiplying. You get married, they multiply even more. But they're creating a way so that you have hypersensitivity in your nerves of your airways, right? And then you have a protein problem where you're not able to actually absorb these different enzymes, and then it's shutting your different functions down.
Yeah. So when COVID was first really starting out, you might have heard that people are experiencing this thing called a cytokine storm or cytokine storm, and essentially these are chemicals that your body releases in the immune system, and it essentially starts going awry. It's an attack function, and it was essentially causing inflammation. That's why we heard stuff like hydroxychloroquine, which is an anti-inflammatory. They were looking for ways to stop this inflammation and destruction because our bodies basically started attacking themselves. And the Brady-Kinnan storm is what they've been talking about for this particular thing. Is like the same kind of thing, but it's a different particular cytokine type biological response. And so like the Brady-Kinnan response is something that was theorized, and now they're like, okay, no, this one looks like it's got some real basis because
they actually have a model
analysis. Yeah, that's what it is. So like they have a model, they've got some statistical analysis. It looks like that is a better fit than the cytokine storm that they've been seeing, and which is also, as time goes on, you have more and more information. So we have people that were getting false positives for all kinds of other things when they were getting tested, and so now we're getting better and better at isolating the specific test so that you get non-false responses. So you actually get real testing, and then on top of that, we have a better idea of the mechanism with which this disease is actually destroying stuff. So the disease itself, in a lot of cases, isn't going into your cells and ripping it apart. The disease is tricking your body to destroy itself. And that's part of the terrifying aspect of this, because it becomes this huge organ failure, massive regional problem, as opposed to like specific located things. It's terrifying. The examples that I've seen of people's lungs that are attacked and inflamed are just it's just it's intense. And so like the Brady-Kinnan stuff, having that on the mathematical analyses just for predictive stuff. Like science can predict things. That's what we talk about. Like we always talk about the ability to predict things. We have a model that can predict whether or not this will happen or this will happen. And we see in the real world it's following this pattern. We've created a pattern. We now know something, as opposed to just throwing anything at the wall, which is the first time you hear of a long name like hydroxychloroquine, and you're like, that totally, we should just try that until it fails. I'm not into human experimentation. I'd rather have a model and information. So I love the fact that these people are using these supercomputers for this right now.
I just kind of skipped a little ahead here because I was just skimming just to say something smart, and I found it. they were a little later on. They're talking about another insidious trick, as they put it, from COVID-19, and they're mentioning another pathway. Their data shows the increased production of hyaluronic acid (HLA) in the lungs. Now, what this is it's often used in soaps and lotions because it is able to absorb more than 1,000 times its own weight in fluid. So you put this into the lungs that are already having fluid leaked into them. And basically, as they describe it, they say it forms a hydrogel which can fill the lungs in some patients. And one of the I think it was one of the doctors described it as like trying to breathe through Jello, which again runs parallel with a lot of what we've seen and a lot of the reports that we've heard about how hard it is for some people to breathe.
It's like fast onset emphysema. Ugh.
I'll take your word for that one.
Emphysema is essentially drowning in your own fluids from smokers.
Makes sense then. But then they also mentioned that this could account for why ventilators haven't been as effective in treating the advanced COVID cases, simply because
they can't get the air in. Holy crap.
No, they can't. They describe the lung as a water balloon, and you can still suffocate even while you're receiving full breathing support. So it's absolutely astounding, and I love that you brought up the fact that science is predictive, because it's one of the things that drives me nuts. People are like, "Oh, what does science know?" And I'm like, "Well, science can predict things. It may not always know the specifics, but it can give you a good idea."
Otherwise, you just use an iterative process. We throw every disease at it. It kills 40% of the people, and then one of these works. Or would you rather we only kill 0.5% of the people?
Yeah.
I don't know.
But the fact that we're breaking down these models, and they're showing us things that we've already noticed, then we might have it. Yeah, then we might have an idea on how we can try to get ahead of this before it has a chance to maybe take another little step and start doing other nasty things or get worse.
So the germ theory of disease takes a hypothesis and uses information to confirm the hypothesis, and then we confirm the theory of whatever is happening. Oh yeah,
not that he isn't dead to most of us, but in Greatest Show on Earth, Richard Dawkins' book about evolution, he discusses the fact that there's a semantic argument about the difference between the way science uses terms like theory and the way people colloquially use theory. And again, Richard Dawkins is, dead to us all, because dead to us all.
But just stick with your biology.
This is a good point. This is a point that I thought is rather important to notice, is that a lot of people will say, oh, that's just a theory. It's like, no, gravity is not just a theory. If I push you, you will fall down that hill there. You will suffer the consequences. That's not a theory that you're thinking of. But it's showing. Sorry?
Just bringing it back to, I like what you have highlighted right now, Tanner, on that one. It's like a burglar who slips in unlocked second floor window to ransack your house. It's like coming in a place you don't expect it to, and it's a really dangerous and deeply frightening thing to think about. It's like some people, there's nothing, but you always hear about people expressing a fear of drowning or something like that. This is drowning in a hospital bed.
Yeah, which is kind of weird, right, to some extent, because you never would think that could happen. But that's the idea behind the difference of this Brackeninen storm that they talk about. Because
yes, we have to hashtag every one of these weird pronunciations.
Brackeninen.
It's kind of like Chichulu, right? Like my son. Here's a tangent. My son would not watch the new Lovecraft Country with me because I say Chichulu. And it bothers him to such an extreme extent. I only say it now. Like I don't like I know it's Cthulhu, but I don't care. It's like I'm gonna say Cthulhu. So like we'll be watching the show, and I finally got him to watch it with me, but we'll be watching the show and be like, how do you like that Cthulhu monster? And he'd be like, damn it, Dad. That's not how you say that. That's not how you say that. Like, all right. Fair enough. Anyway, back to supercomputers. But you're right. That the reason I highlighted that is because it brought it home to me personally. I was like, oh, this makes sense for somebody that doesn't have a doctorate degree in science, or literature. I get it. That makes total sense what it's doing to your system now. And that's why this is such an important study that has happened, right? It's so important that we're looking at the Brady Kinnanen and ensure that we understand. Oh man, I can't wait to say that forever. There you go. You should clip all of mine and put it to like electronic music, kind of like Ben Shapiro's WAP. You can call it Tanner's.
Well, so far I have 3. I have Brady Kinnanen, Brackenanen, and Brady. Hashtag.
Kind of like phenomenon.
Sounds like you're having a psychic fight.
How do we say?
So, anyways,
Brady
any
phenomena?
science is a series of small steps up Mount Improbable, right? And this is another step on a series of small but really, really important steps to fully understanding what this is, to get it under control, and maybe, just maybe, we can take care of this in the near year-ish. Once we have a variety of tools to start working at, once we have this type of thing here, we understand the mechanism for what it's doing and why it's destroying full-on organs in your body, then we have a tool, right? We have a tool. So we can start with working with not so much a cure, like having a full-on panacea, having a vaccine, but we can actually have a pathology and a variety of things that we can use to start treating this disease. Because even treatment right now is ad hoc. What has worked? Let's try this. Let's do that. There's no recipe. And if we can understand what it's doing, we can create a treatment. And once we have a treatment, we can at least hold it at bay and keep people alive until maybe, if ever, we actually do have a really functional vaccine. If we have mutation rates that are really too fast and too quick, we may never have a fully functioning vaccine. We may have something like our flu shot, where you just get this thing every year to try to deal with the majority of the problem. And, you always got to keep an eye on it. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But this is a huge step up, the side of a slow incline. This is, as far as anything I've seen, this is probably one of the more important, besides the genomic sequencing of this disease, this is probably one of the more important discoveries that we've had so far.
Agreed. And it's, as we wrap up, I think another beautiful side of this is the fact that as they come to understand various ways that this the virus is affecting the body, and we're showing that the models that they developed are predictive of what we've already seen happening, they're increasing in their reliability and validity, and I don't see why they can't help us as you were saying there, increase our arsenal of ways that we can better equip ourselves to handle this, so it may not necessarily be as detrimental to somebody later on. And for all them people who are so fussed about getting back to work and getting things back to normal, well, science is helping. You just got to sit down, shut up, listen, and let it do its thing.
You hear those thoughts and prayers?
No.
I don't either. So I don't know. This is cool, and I'm glad you brought it up, Tanner, because this is definitely something that I read through earlier in the week, and I found it interesting and actually had saved it on my Reddit. So this is important stuff.
Yeah, and I think one of the big things here is, they talk about is your blood vessels leaking, right? That's part of what is causing, it to help, right? And that's kind of one of the big, for me, like me, I was like, oh, they're leaking. So they're leaky breaks. They're breaking leaks.
Oh, it's one of the things you hear. One of the big things they talk about is that they were like, why the heck is this causing all of these blood clots to come out, and people are like dying from stroke? Like what, how and why, and massive stroke problems and blood clot problems, and there's like, what? And so that's one of the symptoms of this is like blood clots in your body forming and essentially starving your parts of your body. Like they were just trying to figure out why blood clots are a massive issue, and part of this can be part of that Brady Kinnon storm. And so a lot of these
Brady
things
Kinnunen.
are really
You got to pronounce it right.
Brady Kinnon. I can't
Kinnunen.
add an extra in and then.
Kinnunen.
It's like some people can't roll their R's when they're speaking in Spanish. They just I can't add the extra I and N. It's like if someone says aluminum, and then someone from if someone from England says aluminium, although at least they finally added the extra I. It was just saying it wrong. They changed the spelling to support their pronunciation. Which okay, that's fine. If you're gonna do that, we'll deal with that. But Chris, nobody's ever gonna actually add the extra IN on there. That's all you, man.
They might. We'll come back to that in a minute. You know, the other big thing I saw in this was the blood-brain barrier breaking down. Right? You know, like that's pretty big, man. Right?
Strokey.
I mean,
yeah.
If Brady is out there trying to throw a pass, and I'm Kinnunen trying to catch that pass. I don't know. I don't know where I'm just gonna stop right there. But you know, like you get what I'm saying. Like that, the blood-brain barrier is actually a very important, you know, thing for us. And there's been other diseases that are not solvable because it's breaking that barrier. And so, you know, for me, when you start hearing this, you go, "Well, hold on a second, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is not good."
Well, what if someone strokes out, right? There's someone living in a small rural town, they stroke out and they die. Your blood-brain barrier has been compromised. You have a clot and you die. You're diagnosed with a stroke and they put you in the ground and you're gone. So like all of these comorbidities that you hear people laughing at Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez about. And it's like, comorbidities, there's only 6,000 people that have actually died of COVID. Really? So you're saying that COVID, turning your body's immune system into just the doom guy with a 12 gauge running around shooting everything he sees, that's definitely not related. And that's what this is kind of like doing. It's like letting loose a bunch of dudes with 12 gauges to just start shooting the insides of your brain blood pathways. It's going to be a mess, and you might not get diagnosed specifically with COVID, but you're still going to die. There's all kinds of things that this disease is starting to create when it comes to starting an avalanche. There are all kinds of diseases you could have lived with for 10, 15, 20 years, but since you got COVID, it accelerated everything to the point where it eventually could be a reason for the end of your life. And this study is explaining this storm that is potentially the cause of death for a lot of people who weren't particularly at risk, but it just turned everything on. And it's pretty cool, but it's also terrifying to realize that like the amount that your body can actually do. I mean, just turn a couple of switches on and your brain and your body can just go completely haywire, which is another testament to, you know, that inimitable will that we or the perfect design that, you know, bananas in the eye, right? It's definitely a more fragile, more evolutionary track that it seems to be taking.
Exactly. You know, and that's you know, the key here, right? Is there's so many different things we could look at. And you know, they talk about ACE inhibitors, right? Things you use to treat blood pressure could be helping with this. And they have I don't know, they have so many things that go into this, so many things. They actually even have a list in here, if you want to read it, of all the different drugs that are already FDA approved.
Oh yeah. It's a great thing because there's a ton of medicine that's already been approved to treat this problem.
You know, and so that's where I kind of say, hey, we got to be very careful.
Mm-hmm. Well, science always has to be careful. We know that.
But at the same time, the one drug that doesn't show up on here, right?
Oh, you.
Well, what do you mean? What do you mean hydroxychloroquine isn't on here? What? What madness?
It's an anti-inflammatory for a different kind of storm. Anywho.
So
you see
we're gonna go back to the Brekinen and it's said in this somewhere. Okay, not there.
I'm Marley Schaefer and Andy Rooney.
Oh my gosh. Is it this one?
Yeah, one more.
Coming to rescue the lot of you. Shoot.
Oh my.
Is that the best you can do?
Oh my.
Show me what you got.
All right, this pisses me off. I had it, and I don't know where it went.
What did you have?
I want to
Maybe we can all play it inside our minds.
Okay. So if we go back to me saying bracken and you're like, nobody's gonna ever say that. Nobody ever says those things because that's how you sound. In The Simpsons, when they make fun of they could not say The Shining, right? So they had to say The Shinin.
Oh Jesus!
They did. It's a fact that happens.
And so,
Yes,
with
I
your
think I remember
confirmation
that.
bias and your simple human brain creating patterns in the lizard brain, you have somehow connected that The Simpsons from a 20-year-old episode is definitely connected to the Brady Kinnanen that you're doing tonight, associated with
100%.
I believe it.
Okay, I definitely believe it. I definitely believe it.
All right.
I'm going to get a shot of hydrochloroquine, and I'm going to pray.
Pray the gay
away. I didn't want to say it.
It's called satire.
Yeah.
I just don't remember where in the episode he actually says it. Is it here?
Hey, I found a shortcut through a hedge maze.
It sounds like we're listening.
No.
It sounds
too
like
easy on
we're
the wee
listening
one. His
to the
father's
PA
gonna go
system in a
crazy
baseball
and jump
stadium.
all into August.
August.
Oh, they just play Simpsons
You
quotes.
read my thoughts. You've got the shinin.
You mean shining?
Shh. You want to get sued? Now look, boy. If your dad goes gaga.
See? There it is. Right there. You heard it first on Cellar Door Skeptics 25 years later. Ugh. Anyway.
I stand corrected. I guess.
You do. You 100% do. People will be
Done.
saying the bracken because they don't want to get sued by some scientists saying, I did the bracken and...
Yeah, because Jonas Salk was such a great example of scientists holding out on IP and for money and all that.
Fair
All
enough.
right, so there's an angry Canadian.
There is on Keith. I think
Oh.
you are up, buddy.
Oh, yeah. So tonight, in Canadians, we're just as messed up as you. Or what tonight's subheading is stop giving us your conservative values.
We're
Listen,
exporting everything, bro.
I'm not saying Canadian conservatives were, this beacon of hope. But I will say this. It was under conservative leadership that gay marriage was legalized in Canada. I mean, yes, it was years and years and years too late. However, that still happened under conservative leadership. And the Conservative Party is the only party in Canada that had a female or a woman head of the party, a woman prime minister. It may have only been for a few months, but we're still doing a little bit better. And now our conservatives are really no better than Ken Hovind or Amish Wolverine. The hell's his name? I don't know.
Mitch.
The Art Park guy. Yeah, so this comes from the eastern provinces, one of the smaller ones. They're all really small in the Maritimes. They're provinces, anyways. In New Brunswick, and the progressive conservative leader Blaine Higgs decided to tell women in that province that if they wanted safe access to abortion, that they would have to challenge him in court. So recently, there was a candidate spotlight by a country radio station out there, and he dismissed suggestions that his government actually violated the Canada Health Act by upholding a regulation that actively withheld funds to the one and only dedicated abortion clinic. So this place is called Clinic 554, and in my quick Sparks Notes review of it, it appeared to basically be a small province-wide version of Planned Parenthood. While yes, abortion it provides the healthcare known as abortion, but it also focuses on other reproductive rights, primarily giving a woman the chance to maintain autonomy over her body. But basically, there was a little. Oh, there's a doggy there. there was a regulation that basically said that out-of-hospital providers of abortion would have to charge user fees for services and basically donations for those who couldn't actually afford it. Some of us may have heard of these types of services where it's, recommended donation. So you have, it's another way of saying fee without actually saying it's a fee.
Sounds like a poll tax.
More or less. So, yeah, the manager of the clinic, the managing director, he did warn that because of this, the clinic may end up having to close unless that regulation is repealed. So advocacy groups, of course, have gone up against this anti-abortion agenda because he is very anti-abortion. Basically, putting public funding for abortions outside of hospitals as inaccessible, as expensive, and as we all know, that's really just another way of saying, "Oh, sorry, woman, if you get pregnant, we don't care." Another little nail in the coffin of why you're not pro-life. So it also says that these services must be covered either out of pocket or by Medicare and private insurance, which not everybody has. Usually, because we have our public healthcare system, the private insurance isn't exactly necessary. I mean, obviously, if you want things like dental or vision or stuff that goes a little bit further than just the basics of public healthcare, private insurance is going to help. But basically, they're trying to make it so that they can completely control and outlaw a practice of healthcare. And he is so firm in his stance that if you believe that he is violating your rights, Blaine Higgs wants you to take him to court and fight him. I was actually kind of disappointed when I read the article because I found it on Twitter actually like a week ago. And all I saw was part of the headline where it says New Brunswick conservative leaders message to women, fight me. And of course, that was literally after the fight me was the ellipses. So I was just like, what? I need to read this now. And then I read the rest of the title and I'm like, well, that's one, that's really anticlimactic. And two, what a douchebag. Right. So he did come out onto a local public radio station and say that to disagree with him, you'd have to take him to court. I haven't looked too deeply into the Canada Health Act to really explain properly where it's where these types of guidelines, where this is violated. But I did pull up the Clinic 554 website, and it's clinic554.ca. And it's, you go to the website and, they provide all of their address, their contact information. They have their home, their about us. They've got all of their doctors listed here. And I'm just trying to find, there we go. So becoming a client. So right now, they are not accepting any new patients, one-time visits for IUD insertions, they're not accepting new patients, but one-time visits for IUD insertions and abortions are still available. So you see, the whole because you provide abortion and you're not a hospital argument, we're not going to give you funding, is very much the reason why we do not consider the pro-life stance to be actually pro-life, because they are taking a look at a service and they are saying that place should not be able to afford to exist simply because they provide this service, even though they actually provide other services that can circumvent the need for the abortion, by providing proper reproductive health care and access to birth control. They can't, or they will likely, or there's a greater increase of unwanted pregnancy that may result in abortion. And if this foot in the door to repealing abortion access goes through and stays, then the next step, of course, is to put further restrictions. And we've all seen how that pans out. We've all seen heartbeat bills. We've all seen, you can't get an abortion after. Yeah, exactly. In the States, you can't get
page out of the American book. It's terrible.
Flat out. And, the basically putting all of these restrictions on it is just a subtle little way of saying, I want to make it as inconvenient as you or as possible for you to access your autonomy, to assert yourself, to take care of yourself in your way. And it's absolutely disgusting. And as I said, like, keep your damn conservatism to south of the border. Like, we're tired of it here. We already have a joke of a Ford out in Ontario, and we already have bloody Kenny here in Alberta, and now our Maritimes are getting these loud, obnoxious, vocal leaders. I mean, the federal conservative leadership race was concluded last week, and it didn't go the way I wanted it to. And to clear the air on that one, there is somebody that I wanted to lead the Conservatives, because at least he's not the loud, obnoxious, whooping, hooting, and hollering. Oh, them liberals is out to get us. They wants to take your rights, even though we're gonna sell your rights to the highest bidder. And my granny, well, give me a nickel and I'll tell you where she hides her money, and all of that type. That
it's kind of like when Trump says, look. Have you seen Biden's America? Look, it's on fire. This is what happens when Biden is president.
Except that he's not the president. Trump is, so it's Trump's America.
But also, you're talking about like a basic conservative. So like, it was like when the United States realized that they had an inevitability with Barack Obama, and the Republican Party picked up the most centrist leader in their party, John McCain, and they paired him with a crazy person from Alaska, and it failed. But like, John McCain and Bernie Sanders put together their own medical health bill for veterans, and it was completely shot into oblivion by the conservatives in the United States, even though it was bipartisan from like we're talking hard left when it comes to the Democratic Party, but independent. And John McCain, the most famous veteran at the time in the entire United States before they made that crappy movie, but the guy who does the shooty, and I mean, you know what I mean? Like it's having those kinds of leaders, those across the party leaders, nobody's really interested in that. And so it sounds like this guy is another example of that kind of thing where he doesn't understand really what pro-life means, but he understands the American model of starve it completely. And funny enough, don't tread on me, decentralize the government, small government, whatever. But he will completely bury somebody in government bureaucracy. Come on, sue me. Let's get into the system. See if you can afford, to sue as, it's so expensive to retain lawyers and have all that kind of stuff. So sue me. It's like, really? So you're saying that you want us to be in the system to like sue you of this thing that you apparently hate litigious people who are totally filling up the loss, the judicial system. It's just it's a weird cycle that you see every once in a while in this. And the Americas have been doing it forever, and the United States itself, and then apparently it's spreading into Canada, and I'm curious. I'm curious if Mexico has issues with this, because this could be viral. We may have to create a vaccine.
Well, that's that I think might be a whole other topic, but that's also once you start to look into the culture and cultural influence. Also, yes. But just two last little quick points here. So another thing that I glanced over and didn't mention as a parallel to Planned Parenthood in the States here is that the clinic does serve those who don't have they serve patients that don't have a family doctor. And another major community that this clinic services is the LGBT community, especially transgender people, since they offer specialized care that isn't available elsewhere in the province. So in light of this, because I haven't seen any updates since, but I did see a donations page on the clinic554.ca website. Cool. I have added that to the links of the show notes. So if you are able to, obviously it's not an expectation. If you do have a few extra bucks, you can chip them. Obviously, what you're going to be contributing to is, helping women and other marginalized groups of the LGBT community have access to proper reproductive health care that they need, simply because they have a conservative bootlicker who is not above using bullying tactics to get what he wants, and that is control. And that is further subjugation. So if you can donate, by all means, please do. It would be wonderful to see that, this place doesn't end up crumbling because some jackhole on a power trip got in there and, as Hannah eloquently put it, starved him to death.
Win. I don't like winning like that, but yeah.
Win-win. We're winning
Yeah.
here. Is that how this works? We're always winning.
According to Charlie Sheen and his tiger blood, we might be.
Fair enough.
Nice.
Well, I wanted to do this really quick, given that there is some interest, I would say, in changing society, right? Like, I think that's the big thing here, is how do we change society? So I don't know, has anybody, Hannah, did you see this? Is this something that's shown up on your radar?
So one of the things that's frustrating is like I still have notifications on my XM Sirius satellite radio when the Tigers are playing, but Michigan itself is just starting to fade from my my news feed, and so this sounds really cool.
So what this is essentially the city is going to build a resiliency fund that will allow to help build to some different sustainable entities within downtown Grand Rapids, where the poorest communities are currently in our neck of the woods, or my neck of the woods, because you left me.
It looks like they got like a community garden, like creating some stuff like that. Like that's my favorite. Whenever I see community gardens in cities, it makes me so happy. It's so cool. It's so easy to do a raised bed platform garden and grow so much food. I have jalapenos coming out of my ears right now. Like it's not hard. That's so cool.
Well, and I like this, and I actually want to go to my city board in Zealand and actually pose the same thing and be like, hey, look,
let's
folks,
do this.
If they could do this in Grand Rapids, we have more money than them. We could easily do this. And for me, that would mean I don't have to have a garden in my backyard.
Oh,
and I can help.
That's a bit selfish.
Whatever, man. But at the same time, could I help share in this? Right? And so here are some of the different contracts, that are not just this specifically, even though that's amazing. Here's a few of the other contracts, right? So they are doing a multi-part series for residents on the southeast side of town, where they're looking at uplifting resident voices about how they want their food local, right? Hence what you're seeing here.
And yoga and mindfulness too, like something David Teachout used to talk about all the time. Our friend, essentially understanding and basically being aware of your psychology and stuff you're talking about. Like these are things that we talk about. Mental health, help people with mental health. This is a group that sounds like they're working towards that a little bit.
Yeah, and to me, they have something called Grandmas to the Rescue, where they're teaching and helping install raised garden beds because they want to help people grow their own food. And like, I think this should extend farther. And do you need canning classes? Can we just change like the whole big resort to, like some empty building to a canning facility, right? And let people walk through the process. 1 week you got to work here. The next week you're working in the canning facility. Everybody gets a share of the produce that goes out. If you have a big enough garden, you can frickin' have, can you imagine if I could can asparagus, let's say, and have like 20 cans of asparagus and everybody in the community get that?
Yeah, it'd be awesome.
Great. Like
it's one of the things, like
one in a week,
learning how to can is one thing, and then also having the facilities and like all of the equipment. Like I canned some jelly and some jam last year, and it cost me about $100 to get all the gear together. $100 is a big deal for some people. So like they're like, cool, I would love to be able to grow some gardening stuff and then preserve it so that I could eat it in winter. But it's just not financially in there. So this looks like an area where they're like grandmas are teaching kids, trying to like bringing back home ec, right? Like they used to teach
this is like
home economics,
home ec, right?
This is the way, like
part. You're not a farmer. Here you go.
Yeah, so like grandmas living in the house with you used to grandmas to moms to daughters and but like it doesn't have to be female oriented, you know, grandpas to sons to fathers to sons, like all of that kind of stuff can be associated with that. And so that's so cool. Like I guarantee you I will be teaching my daughters how to can now that I know how to do it. It's awesome. So like I definitely support that. That sounds so cool.
Yeah. They're also looking at a homeless youth awareness project to help create different educational campaigns to help the homeless youth in Michigan, right? And I think the difference here is they're saying we recognize this is a problem. We know homeless youth is a problem. And the difference is if you want to keep them away from being permanently homeless, we have to find a way to provide them with stability and experiences that give them enough to get off the streets.
Yeah, a starting point. We got to give them a platform. Like you can't get a job if you don't have a phone. You can't get a job if you don't have an address. Like those two things are requisites for get a job. Like, what's your address? I don't have one. Well, how can I contact you if you get this job? You know what I mean? Like it's impossible. Yep. It's like it's part of the barrier to entry. That's cool. And then they actually have a Black Lives Matter Greater Grand Rapids and Justice for Black Lives mural projects and stuff that it seems like they're going on. So where are those going to be going up? Because I mean, Breonna Taylor and all that kind of stuff that they have on here, like. If that's going to be something that's part of the city community, part of the imagery in the city, it should hopefully inspire young kids who may not be able to get out of there to see, you know, the city respecting those lives. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And so when you add, so there's a fund, there's an outreach fund you can donate to. They're actually putting it up right downtown. So they put out a call. The problem is they wanted to do this like very early in the morning. And it's like, I didn't know what to do because it's like I gotta work all day. But I did share it and gave it to a bunch of people, because they're essentially designing a sign, to commemorate Breonna Taylor, because she's originally from Grand Rapids, Michigan,
Mm-hmm.
And they're doing it. They're collaborating between two organizations, and they're literally doing it right dead center downtown. And I don't remember the specific street per se, but I believe it's right off Division.
But in the end, it sounds like there's a variety of things that are going to be on this list. So even go to the description and you can go through the list. Is there anything specific that you wanted to go over? Because like this is a pretty good sized resource. And there's a lot of really cool things that Grand Rapids is doing. I mean, it's just nice to see these initiatives that are, I guess, taking root in the city. It's a good example because Grand Rapids does have a history. We talked about this multiple times when you talked about the legalized Grand Rapids. The city itself has problems. It has issues, and it has worked to solve some of them. It still does make national news from time to time, as it did not too long ago for the riots that were happening. Or at least the protests, whatever we prefer term is. In the end, Grand Rapids is a big deal. It really does matter what Grand Rapids does. And, if we can lead by example, if you guys can lead by example, I have a hard time separating myself from Michigan and Grand Rapids still. But if you can lead by example, that's just it's an inspiring thing if it works out. I really hope this can be a thing that changes the culture, because when I worked in Grand Rapids, when I worked in some of the cities, when I worked down on Crofton and Madison, and they found a dead girl in the alleyway. She had been stabbed and killed, and like the city has its problems and it has its violence, and people need to start looking out for each other. Get together, everybody band together, and let's go burn down the houses of the rich billionaires who are taking all your labor wealth, right? Exactly. Let's do something useful instead of fighting each other for stuff. So I don't know. There's a socialist moment. I don't remember what happened. I blacked out for a second there.
So there's something I gotta play you a minute before we get into quick saves.
Oh man, remember, it's not gonna make my hearing aids squeal, is it?
Probably not.
Probably not.
Dr. Frankenstein.
What?
Somebody took Rod Swanson's face and put it in Full House, dude. I don't know who this is, I have no idea who this is. This is
Everywhere you
genius.
look. Da 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 da. Oh my god.
So I keep seeing the advertisements.
Yes.
He's so skinny.
Everything.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Like
man.
somebody texted me this while we were doing this show.
This is amazing.
And
I think it's gonna
don't
be
care.
creepy
You can
when
call
Mary
this my
Kate and
quick
Ashley have a
save.
mustache. Oh, that's just
Yo,
so.
yo.
Yep.
It's not. They're imposing the whole face. Somebody took the time to cut that face out and size it.
No,
specifically
it's
to them.
the app. Have you haven't seen the app?
I guess not.
There's a it's all dude. There's a new app that's out there, and I'm not gonna plug it. I vaguely can think of it, but either way, there's an app that you'll see advertised all over your Facebook. I've been seeing it nonstop, and you can literally just click on Keanu Reeves' face, and it will put his face on every single one of whatever video you want to put it in. Like this app it's like a deep fake, but it's like really quick. So like I've seen there's people on my Facebook stories that put their faces. I saw this girl who put her face on all of the faces in the WAP video, and I mean it's just like dude, it takes it's a pay to use app, but you can
Hashtag worth it.
Dude, I really think it is, but also I think these alternative reality blending apps are really dangerous. I'm really uncomfortable with the fact that Ron Swanson is now the face of Full House, but also that these deep fakes can be really convincing to people who aren't internet inoculated.
All right. Anyway, moving on past conspiracy theorist Hannah and to our actual quick saves of the night. Mine was this little gem of an article that I found where essentially people are suggesting that Stonehenge was built to amplify sounds of ancient ruling class rituals, right? So now, you and I have all probably seen American Horror Story. We've seen all sorts of horror movies where they have cults and rituals.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty scary, right? Can you imagine, like, I don't know, when was this created? When was Stonehenge created?
I'm not particularly familiar with like the origin.
Yes.
I'm gonna guess 4,000 or 5,000 years ago.
Okay.
Like I believe it's Druidic, and so that means that it's probably a little post Christianity. And I don't know if it's quite pre, or I know it would be pre-Christianity. I'm gonna guess it's post
25, roughly around like 2500 BC. You know, somewhere in that range. I'm gonna
right in the middle of the range that I just guessed at.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. You're very right. For one. So,
oh God.
but okay. So in all seriousness, though, like this is really cool, right? Like think about
this guy's measuring the audio amplifications of that shape in a room with all those weird triangles that are used to dissipate sound.
Yeah,
and he's measuring what sound does when it's bounced off the Stonehenge shapes.
Yep. And there is literally a journal of science. There's an actual journal that reviewed this, right? And I'm going to be honest, like this was probably a good 2 hours of my time on Sunday. Wow. Just like, holy shit. Who the hell thought of this? Who like got high and like, hey, oh, I had an idea. Maybe Stonehenge is a sound amplifier. Let me call one of my friends here.
It's like the meme hits blunts. Dude, what if Stonehenge was about sound?
Yeah,
it looks like musical notes, bro.
I don't know. I thought it was pretty great. We don't have to
that
go
is
through the
awesome.
Whole article.
That is cool.
It's given what we do on the show, and like you know, like I have to maintain my sound levels. I mean, you heard my dogs earlier because if my noise gate any goes any smaller, he can't hear me unless I like eat my mic. And if it's the way it is, you can hear dogs when they get antsy to either go OUT, which I can't say because they're both looking at me right now. Or, when they decide that somebody's eating food in the kitchen and they want it, so I don't know. I really like this article.
I'm not gonna lie though. I think this also kind of serves to highlight the fact that ancient peoples, without the access to the technology that we have, they figured they were ancient peoples were able to figure out within reason, or within a really reasonable margin of error, the actual size of the Earth. Wasn't that the ancient Greeks who did that first? Like they actually figured out that the Earth, not only was the Earth round, but they actually
I'd have to go back to the there's a Carl Sagan video that basically explains it, but I want to say it was the Greeks. Either that or it was that region that had that initial. But I mean, when I think of the like this entire thing, it's like it's easy. It's really easy to be like, what does Giorgio Tsoukalos think? He's the guy, that aliens guy. What does he think? Does he think that the Stonehenge is a sound amplifier to the gods?
he's not saying it's aliens, but he thinks it's aliens.
Yeah. So like it's just cool. I'm curious if this is like an accidental side effect, because like if sound was like that kind of thing, like enclosures and stuff like that would be more consistent. But that is pretty cool that they're finding like patterns, maybe. That's basically what I see is like patterns, maybe.
Definitely patterns, even though you don't believe them because you're a denier.
We're pattern seeking.
All right, we just gotta keep moving on because it's just gonna go downhill from here. It's already an hour and a half in. Keith, what's your quick save for the week?
All right. I batted around a couple of different ideas, and I actually only settled on this one this morning. And I didn't mean to use that word as a pun, but it's kind of a perfect way of explaining
Just
this.
admit you did. Jesus Christ.
And actually, the hesitation was because I was like, is there a better word? I don't want to make a cheap pun, but no, it's a pun. It's cheap. It's like me. So this thread, I actually found this morning on, I found the screenshot of this morning on Twitter, or Facebook rather, and it's this Twitter account, The Agent NDN, and the original tweet is a thread of common settlerism. So this person is Indigenous, First Nations, Indigenous, regardless. And what they've done is they've compiled, and this list is well over 100 tweets deep. And all it is just casual little lines that are used by people who are settlers or colonists, depending on whichever term you prefer to use. It's called common settlerisms, and basically it's subtle little racist remarks that First Nations people frequently hear. So, for example, there's I pay my taxes for you. Natives get free money. Natives go to school for free. I'm not a settler. I was born here. We can't change what happened 200 years ago. Just let it go. That was normal in those days. I'm the furthest thing from racist, but, and that of course is, the most well known. Then there's, like, what do you natives want? All the chiefs are crooked. There could be only one law. If anything, this is reverse racism. My land isn't stolen. I bought it. You don't speak for all natives because there's the odd pick-me, I'm sure. You didn't have writing higher up on the totem pole, on the warpath. And a lot of these are just little things that many of us commonly say. I mean, like, I'll admit I am totally guilty of using lines like up the totem pole, warpath, which, I mean, on the warpath, I actually didn't realize that was there until I read it on this list. The totem pole is one that I've actively worked to say less, because I realized how often I did say it when discussing, workplace hierarchies and things like that. Saying settler is a slur. I've retweeted this to my accounts, and honestly, this is, I think it's important for those of us of privilege, those of us who are descendant from settlers and colonists, to go over this and don't focus on how you react, but be aware of how each one of these makes you feel. If you jump on the defensive by somebody saying, by somebody saying that it's racist to say the police used to be racist but not anymore. Well, why do you feel that? Why does that make you uncomfortable? Why does reading any of these make you feel uncomfortable to think of it as racist? I mean, it, the bottom line when it comes to checking your privilege and going over things like this, in my experience, and I'm open to being criticized and whatever on it, is if you're gonna sit there and think something isn't racist and it makes you uncomfortable, ask yourself, why are you uncomfortable? What is it that was said, or what is it about what was said that makes you uncomfortable and unable to really sit still and keep from squirming, and really raises the heckles and makes you want to dig in and go, well, no, and question that knee-jerk response. Don't necessarily like fight the knee-jerk response, simply because that's going to defeat the purpose of the exercise. The purpose of the exercise is to challenge your preconceived notions and your internal biases in a way that is not combative but constructive, or I'm going to say this just for you, Hannah, Socratic.
Socratic.
Socratic. You did that on purpose.
Socratic. That's how you say that.
Yeah, and
if it makes you feel any better, Tanner, you sound like you're singing the shark song.
Baby shark.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't. Now you see what you've done, Hannah.
Hey, that's not even the real baby shark.
I live with a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. This is the sound that I hear when I wake up some mornings. Not because anyone's singing it, just because it's playing inside my head.
Well then, so it's, I mean, and right. some of the lines in this thread, I actually recognize as they're not just directed towards Indigenous peoples, but they're also remarks that are directed towards other people of color. So check your privilege, question it, question why you're uncomfortable,
question everything,
question authority, kill your father. Anyways, kill your heroes. Anyways,
move on. All right, Hannah, you've had your tangenting.
Mine is super happy and fun. Anyways,
better than the Ron Swansons. If it's not better than Ron Swanson's, it's only
no. Mine is terribly depressing, but it's a necessary evil. The physics girl on Reddit posted she's Jewish. I am by birth, but not by belief. Because according to the rules, that's how it is. Mommy's Jewish, so you are. So I'm the first of the gas chambers of the three of us. Anyways, they essentially, there's deniers. They have arguments. They use their arguments, and they're terrible and stupid and horrible. But when you refute a denier, you need to have specifics. That's one of the biggest problems, is that when you get into any kind of argument with someone who's denying something, if you don't have hard evidence, like stuff that makes them look stupid in front of the other people, it's very, very difficult to not make this look like an opposing perspectives argument, as opposed to no, you're a dumb person and this really did happen. So the deniers basically question a whole bunch of things, and this has got a really there's a 7 point refutation, and she has on here for like gas chambers having wooden doors, no Zyklon B found in chambers, half-life, and all that kind of stuff. When it talks about like, were they cremating? How do they cremate so many people? How do you burn that many bodies? There's a series of logistical issues that people always love to talk about if they're in that whole whatever trench that you like to call the Holocaust deniers. But this is a resource. Go through it, take a look at a couple of things, and just familiarize yourself with these things, because it's a good thing to have in the back of your head when you hear someone spout something so absurd as to say that the Holocaust didn't exist, or it's some kind of liberal propaganda, that you have a reputation that is based in statistics and fact, because that's the most important part, right? Like if you're going to report like, I don't think that's true, well, that's not going to convince anyone who's listening, because you're never going to convince the person, but you might convince someone who's listening to that person. Because the worst thing that Bill Burr talked about he in some of his stand-up comedy, it's just like you had that one guy who's having a racist tirade in a grocery store, and you hear one dude who works at the store in the back store, and he's like, hey, I like this guy, I like what he's got to have to say. Now there's two of them. Like, you need to be the person who can maybe kill the first the first guy's argument to keep the second guy from getting together and creating some kind of a group. So like, this is an awesome resource. I've never seen one with links this good, so check it out. I really recommend it.
Yeah, and I'm gonna warn everyone ahead of time. Spoiler alert: be very careful the ones you click on. I mean,
this is not work friendly. Don't click on this
No.
shit at work. Do not do it. It's brutal. It's brutal, but like, that's the Holocaust, man. Like, we hear about what's the I can never remember the Nazi law for argumentation. Eventually Hitler would be reference, but either way, that specific theological law, or not theological law, but argumentative law, it's one of those things. It's like, eventually you gotta go into it. And I went into the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C., and every single person in this country should go there at one point in their life, just to see what it's like. I saw a 10 by 10 by 4 feet deep pallet of shoes. You know, like, seeing that in person, close to your system, and seeing these numbers and seeing these articles, it makes a difference. It really does. And you really need to have some kind of connection to it.
and I think, the big thing here, man, you brought the whole show down, dude.
I know. I told you it was terrible,
thing,
but like,
the
I
big
didn't think I was ending it.
Is the importance of this as we move into who you're going to vote for, because
really,
we had a segment where we talked about this.
Yeah.
We did. I mean, this is not something we haven't talked about on the show. So again, I'm not saying Trump's a Nazi, but my request would be, let's not go down that method or that mode, because
Trump's not a Nazi, but Nazis love Trump. And it's difficult to deal with, but we have to really worry about that.
Yeah, we can't have a resurgence. We can't. Man, thanks, Hannah. But I'll be honest with you, is I've read through some of these, and I have officially saved this, because to me, the ability to use this, like in an argument, has already come in handy in less than one day. So
it's important to be armed with facts. If anything, if this show does anything at all, like, just our opinions are always, our own. But if we can impart any kind of factual analysis for people, job well done.
Fight ignorance with knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, and cops still should not kill guilty people.
And Breonna Taylor's murderers are still walking free. Don't forget.
Yes. No, I won't.
Thank you all so much for joining us on Cellar Door Skeptics. We've had an amazing time tonight. If you're watching on Facebook and the audio doesn't match up, I'm very sorry. We tested something just for poops and giggles. We can't quite afford the elite plan for some of these services that are like $40 a month, because we don't feel it would be very good of our financial endeavor to do that when we could be donating back to the community instead. But either which way, thank you all so much for joining us this week on Cellar Door Skeptics. Next week, we have another amazing episode where we're going to answer Republican questions. We're going to talk about Canada and Keith's hatred for it. And maybe there you go. Just pay attention, bro. Maybe if we're lucky, we'll hear me mispronounce words such as Brady isn't an ums, McCarthy isn't an ums, whiskey isn't an ums, and Hannah should participate more in educating Tanner on how to not have horrible language. Anyway, We've had an amazing night. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we'll be back next week with another amazing episode. Thank you, everyone, and have a great night.